Jamil, do you
Yes.
allow us well, we are recording, but do you allow us to use these in our internet for
Yeah, sure.
people to observe? Because we publish in our YouTube account.
Yeah, sure. No problem.
People can have access. Because
Yeah,
many
yeah.
people want to join, but not all of them can participate. So
I understand. I completely understand. No problem.
so because other people teach at the same time or have classes at the same time, or
Oh, wow.
so
Pretty late.
yeah. Well, no, for us, no, because our class goes up to 10 o'clock p.m.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, wow.
You will leave, but we will stay.
Very good.
Yeah,
Very nice.
it's because most people here are from working during the day and teach, and so it's good to have it afterwards. I'll ask them, because we have time. I'll ask them just to say their names and
Yeah.
title of their work. And so, Brenda, would you like to start? Although Brenda has already finished her master some time ago, but please go ahead, Brenda.
Congratulations.
Hi, Jamil. Good evening. Thank you so much. It is a pleasure to be here. I am just returning, actually, after a long time being away from research and studies with Fernanda, but I majored with my master's, and she was the professor who stood with me throughout the 2 years that I was studying. And I'm an English teacher. I teach English to speakers of other languages, and I'm doing it mostly online nowadays. So I have students all around Brazil, and I also have students abroad as well. So, yeah. So, this is my first lesson being back, my first lecture being back. Yeah, so
I hope it's not going to be a shock.
Very honored to be here. So
thank you. The honor is mine. Thank you.
Thank you, Brenda. Milena, would you like to introduce yourself?
Yes. Hi, Jamil. Nice to meet you. It's my first year in a doctorate program. Fernanda is my master teacher. She's been mentoring me since the master degree. My research is in teacher education, and I mostly work with teachers of English as a second language as well in middle and high school programs.
Perfect.
Sara, pode falar em português, Sara, ou pode falar, arranhar no seu inglês. Manda bala. Sara?
Hi, dear.
Hi.
Hi. I am Sarah. I study. Vou falar em português, tipo.
Ok.
Eu sou orientanda de doutorado da professora Fernanda Liberali.
Jamil, you can change to English if you want, and then the translators will translate for you to English.
Sure.
Go ahead, Sarah, please.
Jamil, meu nome é Sara, sou orientanda de doutorado da professora Fernanda Liberali. É um prazer. O que mais que eu preciso perguntar, professora?
É isso, por enquanto é isso.
Eu estou muito ansiosa para participar desta aula e descobrir, né, a forma de pesquisa, uma nova visão, né, a forma como é tratada a questão da violência, da política e sentir da parte de vocês como são tratados esses assuntos.
Nada, Sara. Levi, would you like to introduce yourself? Either language. Obrigada.
Thanks, Sarah.
I try to speak a little English, but
Go ahead in English. Try your best. It's an exercise for you.
Let's see how can I go. So, nice to meet you, Jamil. I'm Levi.
Thank you. Pleasure is mine.
Sorry,
He said the pleasure is his.
Oh, thanks. So I'm an art teacher, and I'm in my first year of master's degree. I guess that's it.
And you work with play and performance in your research?
Yeah. I'm an actor either too, and I was talking to Fernanda that I read your article about Banksy, and I like it. So
thank you.
This is it.
Thank you, Levi. Marisol, it's you. I'm following my squares here.
Oh, hi. Nice to meet you, Jamil. I'm going to speak Portuguese or Spanish.
Whatever you like, whatever works for you.
Eu sou aluna do doutorado.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Eu não entendi o que ele falou.
Ele falou em espanhol com você.
Ah, entonces puedo hablar en español. Yo soy alumna de Fernanda del doctorado. Mi foco de investigación ha sido sobre cómo es la acogida con migrantes de crisis aquí en Brasil. He trabajado con... y la lengua ha surgido como la barrera más significativa. Entonces mi trabajo ha sido hecha con los profesores. Y también he leído el artículo, me gustó mucho, me sentí muy inspirada. Y será un gusto escucharte.
Now we have the great pleasure and honor to have Ladislau Dalbor with us as well. That's so good. I'm so happy to have you here, my dear friend. Ladislau is one of the most famous, important economists and analysts of Brazil, and it's a pleasure and honor to have him with us. Thank you, Ladislau. Would you like to introduce yourself too to Jamil?
Yeah. I am Ladislau Dalbor. I'm a serious person, but I am a good friend of Fernanda. And she said that was so important. Jamil, it's been years. I've been trying to convince my wife that I am so important.
He is. If you look for his name on the internet, you will see how important he is.
Of course.
And the many contributions he has given to our country to analyze the situation in Brazil. And I think it's going to be a great moment for us to have both of you here. Please.
That'll be wonderful. Absolutely. To hear Ladislau's perspective on this. Absolutely.
So Ladislau is a friend of mine from one of the postgraduate courses where I teach the education and curriculum. And Priscilla, who is also here, although she looks like a very young person, and she's also a professor from one of our courses, the International Affairs. Yes?
Yes, International Relations. Hi, everyone. Good evening, everyone. Nice to meet you all. So as Fernanda just said, I am a professor also at PUC-São Paulo, and I teach international relations, and I'm very glad to be here. Thank you so much, Fernanda, for inviting me.
The pleasure. I think Monica is our interpreter, but not only. Monica, would you like to introduce yourself, or are you speaking now? Are you doing the translation now? Because although she started as our interpreter, but now she's part of one of our projects, the one with kids and schools. So she's the organizer. She can't because she's in the other room, she says. But Monica is not only an interpreter, but also a part of our group. And she participates in the research with us. And Giovanna is a friend of hers, works with Monica. Marina, Beatriz, and Regiane, who have their cameras off, they are also members of this group. They are probably moving from one place to the other, so they can listen but not speak. So I'm very, very glad to be here with friends, students, and with Jamil. I have to say that Jamil was one of the best opportunities for me to get to know somebody who really introduced me to new ways of looking at the world and seeing things and questioning things. When we were at the consortium meeting in Rome last year, we met Jamil, and Jamil presented us together with us. We were the ones questioning everything there, because it was the Consortium for Catholic Universities discussing about ecological justice. But Jamil, with his very daring way of speaking, introduced many ways of questioning the ideas that were being presented, mainly about the war in oh my goodness, oh my goodness,
in the Ukraine,
in Ukraine, and about
Ukraine
and other topics that were presented in a way that showed a lot of how these colonized ways of looking at the world are still very efficient in our ways of doing research. So when I planned this course on engaged research, I thought that Jamil was a very important person to start presenting about the world and what goes on and how we can contribute to these discussions about the world in a kind of research that is engaged with the needs of the communities and the needs of the people. So I'm very pleased to introduce Jamil to you. I sent to you all his curriculum, and I think he can talk about his experience much better than me, but I wanted to say that I'm very honored, very thankful, very grateful for your presence with my group, and I hope this can be just the beginning of a long connection with our group. Thank you very much. So the floor is yours, and you can decide if you want me to show the video, if you want to start from another way.
Sure. Let me just thank you all for coming, and thank you, Fernanda, for organizing this and for inviting me, and for the great conversations and the wonderful discussions we had in Rome and over the last few months when we were trying to work together on a project. And it's really important for me that we make these connections and these collaborations, and especially with the Brazilian experience and the importance of the Brazilian experience for the way that I perceive, the world, the decolonial strategies that have been developed by many Brazilian intellectuals are very important for my work. And I continue to learn, and I hope that I will learn more things from our conversation tonight. One of the things that I wanted to mention, and I hope I'll mention it later, is that a couple of months back, I was invited to respond to a book on higher education in Palestine. And I really did a lot of research about the colonial university that quite a few Brazilian scholars have worked on. And hopefully I'll get a chance to talk about that a little bit more. But I can talk a little bit more about these things. One other thing that I'm really happy about being here with you and hearing all of your wonderful comments about Fernanda's work as a mentor is that I really appreciate that work. And I think that people like Fernanda and Ladislao and myself and others who have done a lot of work, we owe it to the younger generation to work with you, to mentor you, to share our experiences, from conceptualizing a research project till the publication of that paper. It's always a challenge to be an academic, and it's always a challenge to make a name for yourself. And I think having mentors who are willing to work with you, sacrifice, and support your work is really, really important. And I'm sure that you share this feeling with me, that you're lucky to have Fernanda as a mentor and as an advisor in your work. And I'm happy later on, after we watch the short movie about Bethlem University, I just wanted you to know a little bit more about where I come from in terms of my work, not my personal history. Hopefully that will give you a sense of what we do and the challenges of our work as academics. And after that, we can talk a little bit more about the research and the research process and some of the things that we'll hopefully talk about as you think about what you want to do in the future. So thanks again for having me. And Fernanda, if you want to play the video now, it would be great.
The fact that we're the only Catholic Christian university on the West Bank makes us quite unique. We unashamedly are a Catholic university to which Muslims feel comfortable in coming. And I think, going back to Jean-Baptiste de La Salle, the atmosphere, the relationships that we are attempting to build here are helping us to create that oasis of peace and that beacon of hope.
In October 1973, 112 students walked onto the campus of Bethlehem University. Then, as now, they were accompanied by the De La Salle Christian Brothers, who, in the footsteps of their founding saint, came to build the kingdom of God through education.
I think a chief virtue among our students is determination. We are only able to accept about 1 in 3 students, so those who are accepted, I think, know they have to measure up. In terms of our research initiatives, we're also doing things that we hope will support the people of Palestine. We also have a new master's program in pilgrimage and tourism because we think that this will be one way to contribute to the economic development of Palestine and a future Palestinian state. Perhaps one of the most concrete evidences of the success of our students is that we have graduates who are currently in and have in the past been accepted into world-class master's and doctoral programs around the world, many of whom then come back and teach for us.
"12 times the university was forced to close because of the conflict. The longest closure lasted 3 years. Some professors continue to teach in secret.
Staying here by being here, we're believable. If we ran, then our message is lost.
I came from New Zealand to Palestine, and in the time that I have been there, I'm finding it more and more difficult to see how peace can come. And yet there are other places in the world where peace seemed impossible, and yet it happened. South Africa, Northern Ireland, Germany, East Timor. And that is the hope that I hold on to, that somehow, beyond how I can see it can happen, peace will come to that land where Jesus walked. And when it does come, what Palestine is going to need are educated, resourceful, creative Palestinians. And that is why Bethlehem University is so important, because we are helping to create that pool of people who are going to make the new Palestine, who are going to help create that environment where it is possible for people to do what Jesus wanted, that is, to live life to the full.
What I remember about myself is that I'm not the same girl I was. When I came to Bethlehem University, the whole world around me has painted in one color, my color. My horizons were narrow and shallow. Now that has changed. Bethlehem University opened me to so many different ideas and attitudes. It gave me all I needed to be who I want to be and more. It has trained my heart on peace. At Bethlehem University, I was turned into a living conscience, and now feel so responsible to learn about and improve this world.
Challenges remain, but the youth are taking the future in their hands. Since the first class of 112, over 14,000 students have now graduated from Bethlehem University.
I keep coming back to John 10:10. I've come that you may have life and have it in its fullness. I've never worked in a place where it's so obvious that what we're doing is worthwhile. Just to see the pride that they had in having reached that point, of having got to the point of graduating, despite the hassles, despite the restrictions. I find it really satisfying to see students taking the opportunity here at Bethlehem University and really growing. One of the things Bethlehem University is doing is helping to build this nation, founded on truth, built on justice, animated by love.
Okay, great. Thanks, Fernanda. Any thoughts? Would you like to guys comment on the film, what you have seen, something that surprised you, something you didn't know, something you liked?
Well, I saw similarities in the attitude to our own university in terms of assuming the responsibility of developing a kind of work that can contribute to society. And this is something that PUC São Paulo has as its main concern as well. So I saw a similarity there. I don't know.
Great. Any other thoughts?
A resistência, a coragem dos professores também de continuarem lecionando em segredo, apesar da guerra, né? A coragem deles é impressionante. Determinados. Presidência marcante de mulheres também.
Yeah, I'd like to comment, on the fact that religions can separate us so much, and religious movement can bring us together. It's a very courageous way, because instead of religious wars, we have this common humanity, and this is a huge issue for us.
Thank you. Any other thoughts?
When I was in Algiers as an exile from the dictatorship here, I had very rich contacts with all the Palestinian movements that were represented formally there, and it was immensely rich, because at the time we had a very violent dictatorship, and there was a natural identification with all this kind of troubles, and then I worked for Nelson Mandela just after he came out of prison I organized a kind of a social development plan for the Gauteng province, which is the central province in around Johannesburg, and it is so shocking, because it's all apartheid. And all the huge human primitivism and bestiality that you actually are not recognizing a human being in front of you, and this is sickening. This goes much more beyond politics.
No, absolutely, and it gets worse, unfortunately. As we can see in the last few years, it's really getting worse. But I feel we should listen to your experience. I would love to hear more about your experience with the exile groups and with Mandela in South Africa. Have you written your memoirs, Ladislav?
Yes, there is a book. It's called The Broken Mosaic.
Okay.
The Broken Mosaic.
It has been translated?
Sorry?
Has it been translated into English?
Yes, it's in English, The Broken Mosaic.
Okay.
It's published by Z Books in England. And, the full text is on my website. One of my achievements, as Fernanda says, is we are a network of scholars. We put all our research and books,
of course,
text online, free of charge, Creative Commons.
Of course.
And the books continue selling the same, it's so stupid. Nice. This copyright business and that. And we have to have this pedagogical effect,
Absolutely. Decolonize knowledge and make it accessible. Absolutely. That's really important. Definitely. I had once a colleague from Europe, I think, emailed me asking me if I wouldn't mind him downloading my book from the internet. And I said, no, of course not. You can absolutely feel free. Get it for free. Why not? The best thing that we can do, help support each other with these things. Definitely.
I sent you the link to his webpage, to Ladislav.
Excellent. Thank you.
I'll put my website.
Send it to my email or to my WhatsApp?
To your.
I put it on the chat box here.
Okay, excellent.
I already did, Ladislav.
Very good. So everybody else can read it. This is really important work. Here you go. Very good. The dalbor.org. Fantastic. Very good. So thank you for the comments on the film. These are really good comments, and obviously this experience of the underground teaching was also news to me. I didn't grow up. I grew up in de facto apartheid inside the state of Israel, inside the Green Line. But you tend not to see it's not very visible, especially when you are in a context like when it's the area I grew up in is where my family has been there for hundreds of years, and but when I decided to start teaching in the occupied territories, obviously the checkpoints and the military movement and everything else become strikingly visible, and all of the iconography of the occupation and the apartheid regime, from the big walls that separate Palestinians from Israelis to the watchtowers that you can see everywhere, the cameras and the security and the surveillance, the drones and all of the militarization of the space around Palestine and the indigenous Palestinian Arab community inside Israel as well. Obviously that had an effect on me. And I grew up in a town very close to the town where my family on both sides, my mom's family and my dad's family, were kicked out from in 1948 in the Nakba, that eventful, tragic, ethnic cleansing moment in the history of Palestine. So my mom was born in a town close to where I was born. The town that she came from is called Tantura, and it's a very beautiful coastal town that I also spend a lot of time when I'm there on the beach. It's very close to my heart because my mom was born there, and a lot of people, from my family were killed in the massacre that was committed in the Nakba in that town. Some of my father's maternal uncles and some of my mom's paternal uncles were murdered in that massacre. Many people, people were afraid to talk about these massacres for a long time, but now they have been really documented a lot. And people talk today about all of these actions that lead to the destruction of Palestinian society as the ongoing Nakba. The Nakba, in Arabic, they call it al-Nakba al-Mustamirra, the ongoing Nakba. That the event of the Nakba in 1948 did not stop with the cataclysmic event of the Nakba itself, but continues in minor and major episodes now, events, individual and collective and military, that continue to suppress, eradicate, erase, displace the Palestinian presence from the land. Now, in the article that I shared with you, that Fernanda sent you, I was trying to capture something, some more recent developments inside what I call the apartheid Jewish ethnocratic state, which is really what Israel defines itself as, that it's an ethnocratic state, a state for the Jewish people. So even though I was born there, like the difference between citizenship and nationality is central to the conception or self-identity of Israel and the Israelis, which makes it obviously challenging to speak about democracy when you hear people talk about the only democracy in the Middle East. For me, it's always a myth and a legend, because the state is based on a national law that defines itself as the state of the Jewish people. So even though we were born there, that I descend from Palestinians who lived there for, I don't know, millennia, I do not belong there according to the law, right? Fortunately, we haven't reached a stage where we are expelled, but with the recent, what I call qualitative transformations in the power structure in Israel, something is happening, and in the context of what I call authoritarian capitalism around the world. All of these fascist right-wing movements that you see everywhere have had impacted Israeli politics. And you can see it in the rise of what I call extremist messianic Zionist ideology. And as you could see from one of the sections there, that they no longer hide that sort of hate and polarization and the binary thinking of us and them. It's no longer hidden. Actually, everything is, do you want me to slow down?
I'm just telling people that there is another room where they can have it in Portuguese.
Oh, okay. Oh, okay, good. So, so I was trying to trace the recent, qualitative developments in both, not only the Zionist settler colonial ideology that allowed the occupation and the colonization of historical Palestine, and now the size of Palestinian land owned by Palestinian Arab is shrinking on a daily basis because of this, but also the neoliberal policies that also affect how the Palestinian struggle for freedom is translated on the ground in Palestine and around the world. So part of, I know some of the friends here talked about research and their interest in research and what have you. I'm not a political scientist. I'm a professor of literature, post-colonial literature, but our reading of literary texts really are developed today at the intersection of many disciplines. So for us to do good literary analysis, we need to be grounded in many other disciplines. When I did my PhD, I did read a lot about postmodern geographies. I read about gender studies. I read history. I read philosophy. And all of these disciplines impact how we interpret literary text to try to understand what the text is really all about. And and the other aspect of this is that for me, the understanding any sort of local phenomenon or something that happens in any country must also be related to the global context, especially the developments in global capitalism. That's why if you read my articles, you will always notice that I'm making two movements. The first movement, I'm discussing it in terms of the contradictions on the ground. Like in this last piece, it was about the national identity in addition to the religion and secularism contradictions. So I was exploring these contradictions and how they are articulated and played out in the current Palestinian struggle for freedom, as I like to say it. I don't use the word conflict because there is no conflict. Conflict implies a struggle, a fight between two equal partners, but the Palestinians are not equal to the Israeli military powers, so it cannot be a conflict between two equal powers. I use terms that historians use and who have documented the ethnic cleansing of Palestine from the Nakba till today very meticulously. So these are the terms that I use, and I'm using them also to understand the contradictions that are developing today on the ground. But then I also try to read it in the larger context of the changes in the global capitalist system. It's important to me because in the end, I also believe in solidarity politics. If there are Israelis or Jews around the world who believe in dismantling or decolonizing Israel, who believe in dismantling Jewish supremacy and privileges and the apartheid regime in Israel and Palestine, then I'm willing to work with them. Solidarity is important because in the end, I want to see Palestinians free like everybody else. And at the same time, I want everyone else to be free. It's a matter of thinking about freedom, not only for my, kin and relatives or people that I care about that I know personally, but I care about it at that level of humanity for everyone. And that's what we're striving for. And that's why Ladislaw's words about dehumanization and the ramifications or the impact of dehumanization as a result of the apartheid mentality is really very important to understand. I was reading today about a scholar who talked about the 10 steps of genocide and how, in countries where genocides happen, there's a process that you can identify how they classify people, how they demonize them, and how they dehumanize them. And once you dehumanize the other, then you make it possible to start exterminating them. And that is very, again, for me, it's very dangerous. And I'm trying to raise a lot of awareness and consciousness about this. I know it's very tough because, as you can probably tell from all of the things that are happening around Israel, especially in terms of selling all of the surveillance technology to countries around the world. Excuse me. Israel is not only getting money, but they're also getting international support, political and diplomatic support. If you want my technology, you have to vote for me in the United Nations, right? Quid pro quo policy. And this is something that a friend of mine, an Australian Jew, Tony Lowenstein, has documented in a book called The Palestine Laboratory, which I really recommend to you as an interesting reading about the situation in Palestine and what's happening with all of these surveillance technologies that are developed by many Israeli companies that are used again. Yes.
Could you repeat the book or?
Yes, it's called The Palestine Laboratory. Okay, by Anthony Lowenstein. I can send you also the link. I have your email address, and I'll be more than happy to send you also a copy of it if you would like to look at it on PDF. So this is basically like what I was trying to do in the text. So I you know, a lot of my colleagues and friends who analyze the situation on the ground, they look at the traditional lens of settler colonial studies, which is really great, and they have done a lot of important work. But I just thought, you know what, which will also link hopefully to something I'm going to say about research. So I just said, you know what, I'm going to be repeating what we know in the field. What else can I say about the issue? And one of the things that I wanted to do is show the most recent manifestations of the Zionist settler colonial ideology. And obviously, if you follow the news and the commentary about Israel-Palestine the way that I do, in 3 languages, then you can get really a multifaceted or multi-sided perspective on these things, and can get a deeper understanding of what's happening. And I noticed, again, like people have talked about it, but I thought that this was something that really needs to be documented and talked about in more depth. The rise of extremist messianic Zionist ideology, because of how scary it is, because of how people have called it fascist. Some Jewish philosopher even called them Juden Nazis, Jewish Nazis. I mean, and again, I usually refrain from using the term Nazi in my writing. I don't like to use this term. We haven't reached that stage, and I hope we don't. But definitely elements of fascism are there. What I call usually authoritarian capitalism is more obvious. And obviously now, the other level of the analysis is to try to see how this connects with whatever is going on around the world in the capitalist market. And as Fernanda and I were talking about once, you know, thinking about what some scholars have called necrocapitalism. So people like Banerjee, people like James Tyner, people like Sayag Valencia in her book, Gore Capitalism. You know, various people have done excellent work on necrocapitalism and gore capitalism that I thought was really obvious in legitimizing violence and degrading life even more. Not only cheapening life, but turning life into a commodity. And since I was talking about the pandemic of organized crime in my community, I really wanted to show that this is not really about morals. You know, when people talk to me, they would say, but, you know, Professor, what about parents not taking care of their children? And I'm like, but did you think about why these parents who cannot afford providing for their kids cannot control their kids? So it is not just simply about, oh, these parents or these children lack moral values. I don't think values have anything to do with this moral values. Morality is not the issue here. If the state and society is immiserating, making people poor, depriving them from the basic amenities of life, then families are not going to be able to provide for their children. And these children will go out, will see their friends wearing the most expensive brands, driving expensive cars, and they want to be also enjoying life like that. So I thought that adding the analysis of organized crime and the violence of organized crime in the indigenous Palestinian Arab community inside Israel is the result of historically, like what settler colonial study scholars have said, is a reflection of the foundation of the state of Israel that is based on the Nakba, that is based on the destruction of Palestinians. So that violence is constitutive to the establishment of the state of Israel and cannot be gotten rid of that easy. It's the stain that will remain. And historically, like when I was reading more about organized crime, and again, this is nothing, it's not my field of expertise, but it took me about 3 weeks to write the first short piece and then a couple of more weeks more to finish the other one. So it was really a long, you know, writing process, trying to understand what's going on. And luckily, I built on the work of other researchers who have been working on in these fields. But as I said, you know, they didn't touch on the qualitative changes in the ideological map in Israel. So I, you know, usually use the work of the Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek, and Žižek had analyzed, or in one of his books, talks about various levels of ideology. So he talked about ideological identity, the obvious thing, and then he talked about the surplus enjoyment, the hidden level of ideology that people know they will get if they believe in this ideology. So, for example, Slavoj Žižek gives the example of the KKK, and other examples, more controversial. But in the KKK, basically the idea that if you believed in white supremacy, then you can go and kill Black people and destroy Black lives and rape women and do whatever, okay, with impunity. It wasn't stated clearly, it wasn't stated explicitly, but it was understood that if you believed in this cause, these are the perks, the privileges that you will get. But what I was seeing in this discourse about extremist Messianic Zionist ideology is that this hidden or concealed level of ideology was actually coming out, was explicitly stated. As I showed in the article, and I cited a couple of people, they're basically saying, yeah, let's go and burn more Palestinians, burn their homes, kill them, destroy them, uproot their trees. Completely on the surface, nothing hidden. And I actually was glad today this philosopher, Slavoj Žižek, had published a new piece, and he cited my article actually there a couple of times, and I was happy that he accepted my interpretation of surplus enjoyment. I thought that my interpretation would have been problematic, but I think that he agreed with it, so I was happy about this. So these are the things that I was trying to do. Again, look at the major contradictions. The way that I read a novel, I look at the major contradiction in the novel that is not really stated, that is hidden in the novel, that the novel tries to hide, and try to figure out what that hidden contradiction is, and try to sort of explain it in the context of useful theories that can really shed more light on what's happening and help us make sense of it, so we can start not only raising consciousness about it, but also know how to fight it back. So in the context of organized crime in Palestine, for example, one of the things that are very important in my conclusions is thinking about the racialization of gun control and gun ownership. Who gets to own guns and under what conditions? And making these young men who go around shooting for money understand that their acts are implicated in a long history of colonial oppression. And the other thing is solidarity, to understand the experiences of groups around the world. And I cite the work of African American organizations on violence prevention programs, community violence prevention programs that empower communities, which is really important. And obviously linking all of this to hyper-consumerism and how this consciousness or understanding of hyper-consumerism is very important, again, for trying to go, for maybe, I don't know if we can in the end, because ultimately I do believe in what psychoanalysts say, that sort of surplus enjoyment, the thing that we enjoy the most, that is hidden inside us, will ultimately direct us in many different ways. But this is why I'm attracted to both Marxism and psychoanalysis. But again, not everybody probably would agree with me, and not everybody would think that the conclusions are practical. But this was my reading of whatever was going on. If you have any questions and would like me to talk about certain things, or you have questions about your research or the research process, because this is one thing about the other part of my life as a dean of research, is really I'm committed to, and I love the training that we can, and mentoring that we can provide for faculty members and for graduate students. This is something that I value a lot. And I spend a lot of time thinking about how I can encourage younger researchers develop their own work. And one thing that I wanted to say, since some of you are beginning your research projects or sort of thinking about writing your master thesis or your PhD dissertation, is think from the beginning about what is the original thing that you want to say in your writing, in your dissertation or in your thesis. The issue is not just merely repeating what others have said. Try to find a new angle. Try to find an original thought that will be unique that will distinguish your work and that will contribute to the literature on the topic, not only in Brazil or in the Portuguese-speaking world, right, but also in the academic community in general. So my instructions to my students always say, develop an argument, develop a theoretically informed argument about blah, 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 in response to the critical debates about this blah, 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 about this topic. So it's always, you have to be theoretically informed, and you have to respond to a debate that is existing out there in the field. And once you do that, you will be able to decide what your methodology is, what your theory is, how you're going to approach your content. And based on all of that, hopefully you'll be able to contribute something. Consider yourself, as I always like to say, a member of the global academic community. Okay? And another metaphor I use, maybe you will remember, is that I always tell my students, activate your GPS. Okay? Activate your GPS. Like when you drive a car and you activate your Waze or your Google Maps, that's what you need. See yourself as a member, a participant in the international global community. Consider yourself someone who is going to contribute to the larger debates about this topic. And I wish you obviously all the luck in that. And the last thing I would say, it's not easy. You have to work very hard at it. So I'm glad you have the support of your mentor, Fernanda. I'm sure she's doing great work, but obviously you are going to work very hard to get to that gap in the research that hopefully you will be able to fill by providing a good answer that many people will find interesting and will make yourself carve a niche for yourself in these debates. Okay, I'm going to stop now because
Thank you very much, Jamil, for this introduction to the ideas and to the thoughts you had. I just want to acknowledge the fact that Catherine, my friend from Nigeria, has just entered here to participate with us. I made a mistake with the time, so she only could make it now. And also Eduardo Lopes, who is also a professor from the Federal University of Sergipe, is here, and I'm very glad to have both of them with us. Can we open for some questions, Jamil?
Oh, yes, of course.
So, the floor is open. Who would like to start asking questions or making comments? I know Levi has some comments, so you can start, because you planned before.
That's good. I'm glad.
So it's really good to hear you, Jamil, and you was saying about you talked about freedom, and I believe that education has to go in that direction, a freedom of mind. I seek an education that goes after emancipation. So I was thinking in that scenario that you was saying, I don't know, how can we go for education who provides emancipation? I don't know if you know what I mean.
Yeah, sure.
Because I will use an art to think about it. I guess one way is using art as it's a tool.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Would you like me to take some more questions or respond now? And what do you think?
What do you prefer? Perhaps 2 questions and then you...
Sure, yeah.
So Priscilla, would you like to go?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Fernanda. Thank you, Jamil, for your presentation. I was wondering in your speech about how Israel is now a global reference in the security market. When you mentioned the Palestine laboratory, that's a very interesting subject for me. I come from the international security studies, so I read a lot and I reflect a lot on how there is a private market who sell security as a product, and the Israeli companies actually mention we test our product in the field. They explicitly they use the laboratory idea. It's not academic, it's not academia who is making reference of this idea. And a very interesting mechanism they use is how they, in the same time, they test in the field and then they decontextualize that technology so they can universalize that solution. So what we see is that the same technology tested in Gaza, for example, can be brought to Rio here in Brazil and be adopted in the slums or the poor areas of the city. And because these mechanisms of becoming some universal solution decontextualize from where it is adopted. And something also I would like to hear from you, it's at the same time, if the repression is connected, we also see how the social movements are connected as well. And so we have to think about also I was saying how it's interesting how those companies use this strategy or a mechanism of universalizing security solutions. So they decontextualize the application of those security policies and technologies in Palestine, so they may sell those same solutions to global cities, to other urban contexts, such as Rio, for example, here in Brazil, especially during the mega events, so the Olympics, the World Cup, for example. Israel was a very important security reference, a global reference for security solution. And so, paradigms, they universalize in terms such as specification, disturb control, circulation control, or the use of gates and walls in the city. And so another idea I find very interesting, and I would love to hear from you, is the idea that if the repression is connected, and it is, by companies, by governments, by policies, the transnational social movements should also be transnational. And the idea of transnational solidarity, for example, that Angela Davis uses a lot, the idea that the repression should be connected. The victims should be connected as well in a transnational level. If the repression is connected, also the social movements should do too. So that's the idea I would love to hear from you. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, you and Levi, for your questions. Let me address first of all what Levi was question about education for emancipation. And in my life, when I was at Stetson, doing a lot of my work on back in the States, that is, my work on diversity and, you know, popular culture, and I would use all of these hip and great examples in order to try to educate people and try to develop that sort of radical consciousness and question of things. For example, like in the United States, you will see many universities who believe in diversity and inclusion define diversity in according to the or in terms of the 3 Fs. What I call 3 Fs, nothing bad, don't worry, I'm not going to use any foul language. So it's fabrics, food, and festivities. So if you talk about diversity in the United States, in the liberal sort of mindset, it's always the issue of, oh, you know, let's eat falafel, let's eat hummus, let's eat fajitas, let's wear dashiki, let's go dance salsa, you know, and then you become like the other, right? So it's appropriating and consuming the other. But my struggle was always to sort of say, you know, the diversity for me is really more about the institutional aspect, the 3 Is, the individual, the interpersonal, and the institutional. You have to think always about these institutions. And so you are, you know, we use critical thinking. We don't use Paulo Freire, but we use other people. Many people actually at Penn State where I graduated from, there was a school of critical pedagogy, you know, people who either studied with Paulo Freire or spent time with him, like my wife's professor, Henry Giroux, who wrote many books on critical education and critical pedagogy, and many others. But I've always asked myself the question, like the same question that I asked myself about diversity in the United States. Why do I have every year to repeat the same thing about the 3 Fs and the 3 Is? Why can't we break into this emancipatory mindset and have people, you know, try to understand it differently and invest in a different form of education that leads to emancipation? And you know, many critical pedagogues ask themselves this question, like, why hasn't it happened? We have been teaching all of these younger people for generations on emancipation, but we cannot get to that emancipation. Why is it so chimeric? Why is it so elusive? And I think one book that I would like to recommend to you, Livy, if you would like to read it, it's a book that I enjoy reading a lot, called Acts of Enjoyment by Thomas Reichert. Acts of Enjoyment, which is a book about that uses Zizek's ideas. It's on rhetoric, Zizek, and the return of the subject. So in Acts of Enjoyment, Tom Reichert tries to answer this question. And part of it is really, as I was saying in my article about the excessive enjoyment, that there is something about the subject's excessive enjoyment that does not get them to be interpolated ideologically the way that we expect them to be. Like, we teach certain things and we think that, oh, we are showing you the way. Now it's your time to go out and be free and teach freedom and think about emancipation. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way. We have an investment, like human beings invest in different, even pervert forms of enjoyment that undermine the work of emancipation. And that maybe would be a Zizekian critique of Paulo Freire's work on banking education and conscientization. Like a level of psychoanalytic or some sort of psychoanalytic take on the issue of the surplus enjoyment, the jouissance, I think can maybe help us understand why people still invest in their repression, invest in their oppression. Right, acts of enjoyment, definitely, yeah. I'd recommend it for you, and it's really a great book that lays out the theory of why this emancipatory education hasn't really succeeded so far. Is that good? Helpful? Levi?
Thank you so much.
Of course.
Oh, it's wonderful. It's so good to hear you.
Thank you. And you can email me later. We can talk more, and I can share with you other things that I have. Absolutely. And Priscilla, I mean, you should be speaking about this. You are the expert. You have so much knowledge about this, and that's really wonderful. And I'm glad that you have been following all of these issues and making the clear connections. And the sad, thing about it all, like every time we heard about an Israeli attack on Gaza, or what I call usually genocidal war, that's what was been happening, is basically we ask ourselves, okay, so which weapon are they testing today? What are they trying to sell? That's basically the first question that usually came to our mind when we heard about these wars, or the Israeli war against Palestinians in Gaza. So what are they testing now? And then just imagine living as a lab rat for Israeli security corporations. Imagine the people in the favelas, being treated like these lab rats, where they are used as a test object, not even subject, to make sure that your oppressor will be able to send this technology, sell it, and make money out of it. And not only make money, as Anthony Lowenstein says in his book, The Palestine Laboratory, the other main reason is not just money that these corporations are getting. The Israeli government kind of implicitly arm twists these governments to vote for them or in their favor in international arenas. So they get double benefits. And I think, again, look at the Middle East, for example, and the normalization of relations between Arab countries and Israel. I mean, the whole issue of security or securitization and security collaboration is at the center of it. How to use technologies to continue suppressing the local population. And that's really a major point in what normalization between Arab countries and Israel is all about. Now, the other point that you raised, which is really very important, and I think Levi would probably agree with me, the whole point about because global capitalism is global and transnational, that solidarity movements must be also transnational. Absolutely. And obviously that's a tricky thing, though. The reason that I mentioned Levi is because he read my article on Banksy. And in one part of my article on Banksy, I discuss also that theory by the Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek, the notion of concrete universality. How to form this solidarity between different communities around the world. And it gets a little bit into a kind of a more philosophical, technical part. But Priscilla, I would be more than happy to send my article to you, and you can especially read that part. Slavoj Žižek has written a lot about these things. How to sort of think beyond identity politics. That is the trick about solidarity politics. If we want to work in solidarity, we have to think beyond identity politics. We have to think beyond particularity, not forgetting or denouncing where you are coming from. I don't want to, I don't have any control about where I was born, but the whole idea about capitalism is because these corporations are transnational, because of global capital, we need to remember that we as human beings, despite the identities we are born with or into, there is a universal dimension inside each one of us that we should try to achieve and reach. And if we manage to go beyond these particularities and identities and reach that universal potential within each one of us, okay, and put that universal dimension in the forefront, then I think we can reach some sort of healthy version of solidarity politics. One of the examples that Slavoj Žižek uses, which is really beautiful, two examples that I really like about this universal dimension of identity is, you know, in the Haitian Revolution, the attacking French Imperial Army stopped for a moment because they heard some people singing the Marseillaise, the French national anthem, and they were like, "Oh, did the empire send us more soldiers to come and fight with us against the slave rebels in Haiti?" But it turned out the Haitian slave army itself was singing the Marseillaise. And Žižek has a beautiful interpretation of this. Basically, the Haitian slave army was telling the French people, we are more French than you are. We are the ones who are actually loyal to the values of the Enlightenment that you have forgotten. You are using all of those politics and that ideology to oppress and kill people. We are trying to show you that we are the true embodiment of these great values that came from Europe. I don't think that in this case, I don't really find it Eurocentric at all. I think these values are universal and are much needed all around the world. The point in the end is to recognize that neither the French, nor the Americans, nor the British, nor any other of these colonial countries has any monopoly over these values. These values are universal, and many oppressed people actually represent them and embody them much better than the oppressors themselves. And the other example, of course, that Slavoj uses is Malcolm X. You know, Malcolm X, when he decided to ditch his slave name, he opted for the X as a stand-in for his family name. And again, this the Slovenian philosopher Slavoj Žižek sees this as a beautiful moment of acknowledging that universal dimension of ourselves, that hidden aspect of ourselves that really transcends all of the identity politics. And if you are familiar with American culture, you know there was a huge book and program, TV program called Roots, about, you know, slave rebellion and how slaves went back to roots. And he contrasts that with Malcolm X's X, the X that goes beyond that. And in one of my articles, I disagree a little bit with Slavoj about Malcolm X in the end, because, you know, when he converted to Islam, he chose a name. He called himself Malik Shabazz, which is again kind of a little bit problematic, but the point, at least with the X part, is very important and an indicator of that universal identity that I think can serve as a true ground for solidarity politics around it. So I completely agree, Priscilla. And what I'm saying is just simply a way that this philosopher had actually theorized it for us to sort of start thinking about it more critically.
Thank you very much.
Excellent.
Perfect.
Thank you, Priscilla. Appreciate it.
Wonderful. Anyone else would you like to ask a question or make a comment, let us know?
I have a suggestion, Jamil.
Yes, please.
Basically, you know, I have this website. I started it with my son, which means my son started it for me. I discovered that children, our kids, are very useful, you know. It's amazing.
They can be, if they don't take much of your money, they can be.
Anyhow, this website of mine, you know, I have roughly 1,300 titles there, belonging to so many people who are tired of waiting for people to buy their book, you know, and it is complementary. My books keep selling, although they are free of charge online, you know, but it allows, for example, college students, the professor will not say buy Ladislaw's book, but he can say we will discuss chapter 2 next. So the idea is, instead of having our university as an instrument through diploma to make individual progress for people to climb the social ladder, to think rather of a university as a, it should be universal, let's say. It's in the word. And let's say spreading around. To give you an example, for example, this book of mine, The Age of Unproductive Capital, it's published also by Cambridge Scholars. It's in English, it's in various languages. But basically, I made a video of 10 minutes on each chapter. Then I received a message from a network of favelas from Rio. They had taken the 15 videos. They had read the book, you know, and they were using it to understand the economics. So what I'm bringing is not the example of myself, let's say, but the immense potential we have to work here with Fernanda, with the Catholic University here, with the Bethlem, with others. For example, I've been working with university in Angola, yes, because I mean we have the Portuguese language so easy. The people from Timor-Leste, when they speak Portuguese, they asked me to use my book on technologies for education. So I write them back. They found it on my website. I write them back. Yes, very honored. Please use it. So what I'm suggesting, you know, underline what was discussed here, that we need, like Priscilla said, we need to have, let's say, a global approach to these transformations. I would suggest that we very strongly work on the facility, the ease with which we can cooperate interinstitutionally, you know, among your universities. You know, it's I give classes with 10 guys there, okay, but for example, I gave an inaugural class for social movements. There were 6,500 people, you know, and we can even say, you know, that now these translators, they were very poor, but now you can use this Google Translate and other, and it makes sense. I mean, even the language barrier can be crossed. So it is my suggestion. You know, I've been trying. This is to work to this. Fernanda knows that I've been 4 years trying to make every professor make his own website. You know, because I mean, the Chinese translated some books of mine and they read it. So it doesn't cost me anything if the Chinese. You know? My students are very cynical. They ask me if I like the translation. You know? The fact is that I think we are very modest or very, let's say, limited in giving our classes, on making just our meetings here and there, you know. And there is a possibility of really making this network, scientific network, expanding it, you know. I've been fighting with publishers. Now they guarantee to me that all they publish my books, but they will be all online, free of charge. Yes, but it's much more. What I'm suggesting here in this, that we are underestimating the huge potential of networking this all this progressives. Yes? I was a friend of Eldridge Cleaver in Algiers. He fled to Algiers. He was there representing the Black Panther movement at the time. And well, these are personal contacts like this that you made. But now we can give it another size, you know. I'd like to, of course, we have English as a common language. It's a kind of lingua franca now, but we can go much beyond that. This is my idea, you know, because this would allow us to, among others, concentrate on some key issues. Yes? I worked for UNICEF, and I see, for example, we have now presently between 6 and 8 million children die of hunger every year. The Holocaust was atrocious, but it was 6 million people in 6 years. Yes, here we have, we're not killing them, we're letting them die of hunger. How does a parent feel when his kid is dying of hunger? I mean, there are ways, you know, of taking our discussion out of certain ideological simplifications, you know, and bringing, you know, a kind of unity along some key issues, you know. Cities, the refugees, the apartheids, the different things. Anyhow, I think we are mature, ripe for a kind of indignation network, let's say. You know, I made a very short calculation. The Afghanistan war, 20 years, cost $2.3 trillion. This, if you divide it by some 7,000 days, which are the 20 years, this means $320 million a day, which means they could build roughly 5 hospitals a day, or 20 schools, or send kids for scholarships throughout the world. You know, they used it for bombs, for all the American industry of war, and for the propaganda and all this, and the result is that they get kicked out and nothing changed, you know. This information, I think we are very poor at it, you know, and the possibilities of networking, the fact that communication, the science we create is free once we created it, can be sent to everyone, and there is this connectivity. Almost everyone now will have a cell phone in his pocket, and the idea that the university can have another character, not just promoting individuals with their diploma. You know, I think of let's speak of a cultural revolution, Jamil. You know, we have the technologies. It costs peanuts. You know.
No, I completely agree, Ladislav. The thing is that, you know, this question about the production of knowledge in the global south, and again, the kind of networks that you're talking about, that we should have as activists, as academics, as people, everyday people in the global south, we should be connected with each other even more. And you know, I'm very fortunate to have met you all, and fortunate that I met Fernanda, and that we met online today and we are talking together. This is for me the kind of interaction that we really would like to see more of. And if we can use that in order, as you said before, make knowledge accessible to more people. Yes, absolutely. Many people cannot afford buying these books. Even here, like I'm visiting with my daughters in the States, and in the States, books are expensive. Not everyone will be able to afford these books. So why can't we exactly that money that is used in the service of necrocapitalism and the colonial wars that these colonial empires are waging cannot be used really to improve people's lives. But it's exactly because of that I insist on talking about necrocapitalism, that we have to remind ourselves that in the current global system, some lives are not grievable, are not worthy of grief. They are unmournable, right? They don't want to mourn anyone in public. There are certain lives that are remembered, and many lives are forgotten. And the thing is that, you know, and you will see this trend that even in terms of different classes, that you will see the commodification of life, commodification of bodies in these classes exists, whether you are poor or middle class. But again, you know, like, we need that nuanced look, but we need to make knowledge accessible. We need, as you know, the Brazilian scholar whose work on the decolonizing the university or de-westernizing the university, I'm sure you know him, De Souza Santos. You guys have read him?
Portuguese, Boaventura.
Right, yeah. Is he Portuguese, not Brazilian?
No,
He's a close friend.
Oh, okay.
Boaventura de Souza Santos is a close friend. I worked with him transforming the teaching of economy in the University of Coimbra.
Oh, wow, nice, nice. I don't know, I must have been just simply liking the Brazilian connection that I decided to anoint him as a Brazilian.
Oh, but he has worked so much here that some people think that he is more.
Yeah, because the books that I read were mostly about his experience in Brazil. That's why
he has been. I don't know. He has been involved with difficult things because women are charging him on harassment. So we are kind
that's
of.
Not good. That's not good.
At this moment, he's not so well liked in Brazil.
He was never liked. I completely
Although
understand.
his ideas are.
Yeah.
It is to be discussed. I took him off the book after analyzing his the full report, not just to communicate it. But the essential thing is, Boaventura is in a great part doing this. He's working with Brazil, he's working with Angola, he's working in different languages. You know, this networking, for me, it is so easy. You know, I take my man, I'm just here in Sao Paulo, a professor, yes, an analysis. My website takes me to 800,000 people, you know. We
have to go global, as you were saying, and as Priscilla was saying.
Yes,
and production of knowledge and access, yeah.
You know, Jamil, it is so difficult to convince the professors because they are so keen on having this article published and such a review, and have a few points with authorities and this. I mean, we have to do this because we have to survive. But let's make it.
It's necrocapitalism as well.
It is, yeah.
I would like to ask a question based on what you were saying right before we started now. I even copied this part of the article about necrocapitalism and gore capitalism because I was very much touched by this discussion. This is something that makes me think a lot about, and I'll copy the following one, which is even worse in my opinion. These are two parts in the article that I think are very strong. And I work with kids, and I've been working with kids since I was a kid myself, because I lived in Rio and very close to Jacarezinho. I lived, we say in Rio that you either live in the asphalt or in the hills. If you live in the hills, you live in the favela. If you live in the asphalt, you're okay. It's the same poverty, more or less, but a little bit different. And I lived in the asphalt, and favela do Jacarezinho is a hill. And recently we've heard a lot about kids who have been shot by the police. So in different, I mean, so many so many that it becomes usual. People get, I don't know, it's what you were saying about people don't grieve this life. They don't feel, it's so funny, not funny at all, but if there is a rich kid who is, I don't know, is lost or
kidnapped,
people, oh, it's all about it. But these small kids, Black kids mostly, die every day. 2 days ago, a 5-year-old girl was killed in a favela in Rio. A week ago or some more, a 13-year-old boy was killed by the police again in the favela. And that is
45 persons the week before.
Yes.
45 persons were killed in 3 Brazilian states.
Yeah, I saw that, yeah.
We took the statistics for last year, Fernanda. The average executions by police, 17 persons a day during 2022. This is the average, you know.
My goodness. Oh,
and they call it that there was a shootout or something. No, they're executions.
Execution. So for me, it's exactly this thing. And when I was younger and I thought about capitalism, it was about, I mean, trying to take all our energy, our ways of being, our energy, our ideals and everything. But now it's our lives in a broader sense. And on the other hand, while we are living this, people are moving to a fascist society. So I love the idea of solidarity and what you were saying about having it, I mean, internationally, globally. But the feeling I have is that people are reacting towards this kind of life in the favelas and in the places where I work, moving not towards solidarity and so on, but towards fascism many times.
Yeah, definitely.
Yesterday I was watching TV and I saw what happened in Argentina. They had the first, I don't know how to say this, the first part of their election, and they chose a far-right candidate who says horrible things, very violent ones, and the poor people are cheering for this man. The same happens here for Bolsonaro and others who have the same style, like for the police, because they see this as a kind of solution. But so how do you evaluate this in Palestine? Because we were at this conference in London where Catherine was as well, and this friend of ours from Ghana was telling us about how the communities are getting organized to fight against drug dealers, violence, but they are creating something that is so much connected to what I view as militia. The militia.
Right, yeah, sure.
So the idea is that, well, I don't want to be pessimist, although I am. I work very hard. I'm a very happy person, but I'm very pessimist in terms of what happens in the world. That's why I'm happy and I work with play and all these. But how do you look at these things and find ways to fight against? Because I know that what Ladislau just mentioned about sharing things and doing these things with the different communities and making knowledge accessible is necessary, but it's not fast enough.
Right. No, it's again, going back to Levi's first question about education and emancipation, I think this is really connected. Like, why can't we see the end of the light? We can't see the light at the end of the tunnel, right? Why can't we never sort of approach that ideal of a more just society about people caring about each other? Well, again, because there is, in my opinion, there's a lot of investment that people have in these little pleasures that make them feel more superior, make them feel better than other people. And as I said, like in the work of George Stanton on the 10 steps of genocide, you know, and I hear you, like instead of seeing people will have sympathy, like, oh, okay, poor girl, and then they basically will surf channels and go to see something else. They will completely forget about it, right? And I think that there's so much pressure today, and let me sort of maybe try to answer it in a different way. Like one of the reasons why I feel conspiracy theory is so common today is that people don't know anything about how big decisions that determine not only our lives, but the world. We are clueless about it. We don't know anything about it. So it's easier for people not to try to understand what exactly is happening, but to sort of blame it on these other forces. But who are these other forces? We know who they are. We understand who they are. You know, and I feel like this lack of control that people have over their lives because of the bureaucratization of life and everything that's going around it in this modern techno world is that people are just simply clinging to any sort of narrative or any person who can give them some sense of their value over others. And maybe implicitly, as I say in the second paragraph that you pasted here, it's not just a manifestation of the existential anxiety regarding people's precarity. So it's not just simply about me being employed, employable, or unemployed or unemployable. It's really more about that ontological, unconscious ontological anxiety about how our bodies have become a commodity that we cannot control. That even my body, if someone doesn't like me and goes hire someone to shoot me, and he gets $100 for that, you know, deep down maybe we are internalizing these fears about the changing nature and value of even our bodies, not just simply our lives and our work and our practices. So it's all interrelated. And as I said, you know, when you get in this context, what I called before authoritarian capitalism, where the movement is clear in capital, democracy is not serving the interests and the goals of capitalism well. So what do? You attack democracy, you attack democratic structures. And if you attack democratic structures, you are opening a space for all of these totalitarian or autocratic and authoritarian leaders, whether it's Bolsonaro or Netanyahu or others, to rise. Okay, and when they rise, they legitimize these violent actions because they have already convinced people to think about themselves and their society in terms of the them and us, classifying people, as Stanton says in his article on 10 stages of genocide. If you guys want to read it, it's very interesting. Once you classify people, then you can use symbols to basically make people hate them, show these people do not belong to the group. They are pariah groups. They don't belong to us. Then you can start discriminating against them. Discrimination can be easy after that. Then it goes into dehumanization. All of this is a process that ends with, again, organization of hate groups, genocide. Then we can get into extreme and into polarization of society, where society is seen in terms of these extremes. And then you can get into a stage of preparation and planning for killing. And then you go into persecution and extermination. And finally, what what these people will do after they have committed it is that they deny that they have done anything wrong, right? So I know that it's very hard to be optimistic, and I know that, like in the system, when you're thinking about an education system that is thank you, that is invested in again in commodification of education. Education has become a commodity, and look at the language that many universities use. Students are customers. You know, you're thinking about customers. When you talk about people, decision makers in the university, they are stakeholders. So we have, you know, Ladislav can talk obviously more about this in terms of how the university has become a business, right? A corporation. Some of them don't make much profit, but others are making a lot of profit. And their endowments are huge, you know, and again, like what I always tell people, brace yourself, it's gonna get worse. As they say in Americanese, you know, the shit is going to hit the fan, unfortunately. It's gonna get really worse. And I don't expect it to get better anytime soon. Because the more you think that, you know, why people can't see this? Well, people cannot see it. Like, how many times have you're reading the news and say, like, how these Bolsonaro fans or Trump fans can't see what's going on? Because again, that's where we need psychoanalysis for this. That's where we need the idea of surplus jouissance, the surplus enjoyment, where people invest in different form of perversion and oppression and oppression because it makes them feel good in the end, because it makes them feel distinctive. It gives them a value that distinguishes them from these other people that they don't think are worthy even of living. And that's the sad fact that we have to live with. How do we get out of it? I really don't know. I mean, I just like, you know, as I was saying about organized crime in the Palestinian Arab community, you know, you raise people's consciousness about the racialization of gun control and gun ownership, and who gets to own a gun and who gets to buy a gun, and where are these guns coming from, and what does it mean when you purchase this gun or use this gun, whether it's Brazilian on Brazilian or Arab on Arab, what does that really mean? And when you think about hyper-consumerism and the impact of consumerism on people, I mean, where can we draw the lines, and where can we really begin making a change? I'm really not sure. But I like Ladislav's idea about those of us who are in the academy start breaking down their work and into videos, into other formats that are accessible to people beyond the academy, and reach more people, and start creating more discussions and groups and to be able to get a sense of control over our lives. But it's the challenge, you know, as you guys say in Portuguese, the lucha continua, right? It will never stop. It was gonna be, that's really my motto. Like, it will never stop. The struggle continues, and it will continue. You know, one of the things that I like about Bob Marley, that he said, you know, along the same lines, that basically, like, we're not going to think that the struggle will stop one day, because it will continue, and will continue forever. So again, you know, it's I don't want to end on this pessimistic note, but this is really reality. And again, I'm glad that we are here, we're talking about it, we are thinking about different ways of approaching it, and perhaps, you know, in the future, I will read Levy's book on how we can think about emancipation in education using Zizek's theory, maybe. I don't know. Just a suggestion.
That would be fabulous.
To Tom Reichert and then do it, and read Priscilla's work and other people, and create these connections between our communities together, and come and visit us, and we'll come and visit you, and we'll see the work that is happening on the ground, because that's the way we can learn from each other, hopefully. And if we can save a life, one life would be an accomplishment for all of us.
Yeah, thank you so much for that. That's what this course is about. It's about doing research in the middle of chaos, in the middle of suffering, in the middle of all this necropolitics, necrocapitalism, necro everything, and still we keep on doing it.
Yes, definitely.
And we work a lot with Bader Savaya, a friend of ours from PUC as well. She has the concept of ethical political suffering,
okay,
which is a kind of suffering that unites us all. It's not the individual suffering that we each feel when we are, I don't know, we are in love and the person doesn't love us back or things.
Right.
No,
Yeah.
it's the suffering that derives from the unfairness of the world, of the conditions that create oppression. So for this suffering, she uses Spinoza to suggest that what we can do is find what is common within our group and work towards this in order to grow our strength to survive, to make it stronger and connect us all in what Spinoza calls the conatus, the power to keep resisting. And that's what we've been trying to do as a research group. We know it's not easy. I am not an optimistic person at all, and I don't see the world in colorful world, but I am a colorful person. Because
yes, you are. You look very colorful today too,
yes,
Fernanda.
I am. But that's the way, in my opinion, for us to find ways of creating something. If not the world that we want to, at least the world that we can for some people, and keep struggling.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. I like that notion. Usually in my writing, I fall back on what Freud and Lacan and Zizek call the death drive, which is really similar to that notion that you're talking about. Something in us that transcends the biological life that we have and wants to continue living. And that's the thing that cannot be suppressed or destroyed by all of these power structures that keep us moving. But we want people to find that and keep thinking about it in a way that can be used for change and transformation. That's really the big challenge. And obviously, like just maybe one quick one about the ethical and political suffering. I'm going to read it. But one of the things that I always sort of think about, and you see it, is the discourse of victimization that people use. You know, that we're all victims. Trump is a victim. You know, he's a victim. Everywhere is a victim. So one thing that I like that, and I want to read more about her. So please send me the link. But one of the things that we have to make sure that we distinguish from and in our theorization of it is basically that notion of not falling into the victimization trend that we see, because it has become the standard argument for everyone. Everybody is, especially like in liberal Western countries, everybody's a victim.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay.
Thank you very
Well, thank you so much for having me. I'm really grateful.
I cannot say thanks enough to you. I'm very happy.
Thank you, Fernanda.
Obrigada. It was lovely to have you, and I wish we could keep on going forever. And I thank all my friends who are here, Priscila, Ladislau, Eduardo, Catherine, my students who came and prepared and read for this session. And we had 2 weeks ago, we had Luis Felipe, a Brazilian who is living in Notre Dame and works with technology and also with ecology. and it was very fantastic how he worked. This now we had this idea from you. We have some more people coming, and I'm very happy that in a way we are trying to do what Ladislau and Priscilla just said, and you as well. We are connecting with people, not only in a group, in a class, but open to anyone who can share and participate and have the opportunity to increase our power of resistance. Thank you very much for
Thank you. Thank you all. I really appreciate it.
Love to him. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Thank
Take
you.
care, guys.
Thank you.